and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into some of the things that have got you talking today. Now, I'm not a mind reader, but I know that a lot of what has got you talking today is, of course, the new leader of the Tory party. I can't say new Prime Minister, of course, because that doesn't take place until tomorrow. Goodness only knows what these lot are messing around at. It's not like there's a country that's in disarray at the moment, but let's not worry about that, shall we? Today, I want to ask the question, Liz Truss, does she have a mandate to run this country, yes or no? Some say absolutely yes. The process was followed. Many other people say, hang on a second, it's something like 0.17% of the people on the electoral roll voted this person in. We need a second general election. I almost said something I shouldn't have said at 6 o'clock. I'll gloss over that. Priorities. What should Liz Truss focus on? As I said, the country is in a mess. What first? If you was doing her job, and let's be grateful we're not, what would you pick up first? What would you be shaking around? Who would you be putting in your cabinet? And also, I can't finish today without saying bye-bye Boris. His legacy, good or bad? You tell me, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes, because first we're going to bring ourselves up to speed with tonight's latest news headlines.
Michelle, thank you. The news on GB News at just after 6 o'clock. The Conservative Party has selected Liz Truss as its new leader, putting her in line to become the next Prime Minister. Ms Truss beat her rival, Rishi Sunak, by a 57% majority vote of Tory MPs. Queen Elizabeth is scheduled to formally name her as Prime Minister tomorrow. And in a speech following her victory, Liz Truss said it was an honour to be elected and promised to deliver on energy and the NHS.
It's an honour to be elected as leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. I will deliver a bold plan to cut taxes and grow our economy. I will deliver on the energy crisis, dealing with people's energy bills, but also dealing with the long-term issues we have on energy supply.
Meanwhile, in the last few minutes, Priti Patel has announced she'll resign as Home Secretary and will continue to work from the back benches. Let's get the very latest on that now from Mark White, our Home and Security Editor who's in central London. Mark, we heard this from Priti Patel herself. What did it look like?
Well, a real shock announcement, to be honest, because it's not normally the way of things, in the sense that a new Prime Minister is appointed and then, of course, they decide on their cabinet who stays and who goes. Ministers nervously await the result of the Prime Minister's machinations as to whether they are going to remain in office or not. But Priti Patel has decided that she is not waiting to see what Liz Truss is going to do as the new Prime Minister, and she has offered or given her resignation to Prime Minister Boris Johnson ahead of Liz Truss taking office. So that means that there is an immediate vacancy for Home Secretary that Liz Truss will have to fill as a matter of urgency. We're expecting really that tomorrow evening anyway that she would begin appointing the big offices of state, the Chancellor, the Foreign Secretary and the Home Secretary. All the smart money was on Suella Braverman, the current Attorney General, becoming the new Home Secretary. Priti Patel, clearly realising the writing was on the wall, has decided that she is going to jump before being pushed. Now, in that letter to Boris Johnson, she says she is proud of what she has achieved despite all the controversies over the likes of the migrant crisis and rising violent crime.
Are we likely to see any other resignations, do you think, Mark? Anyone else unhappy that Liz Truss is taking the Prime Minister's seat?
Well, it's certainly possible that some other people might decide to go before they're pushed. As I say, it's unusual. We got people who resigned in order to push Boris Johnson out of office in the weeks before he announced that he was resigning as leader, or standing down as leader of the Conservative Party. But of course, we don't normally get this process working like this. As I say, you wait for the new Prime Minister, and then the ministers concerned await the decision of that Prime Minister as to whether they stay or go. As I say, Priti Patel clearly has decided she doesn't want to suffer that sort of... Right, back to you, sorry.
Yeah, I think I got the sense of what you were saying, Mark White in central London. Thanks very much indeed. News away from the politics in London in the past 24 hours. 4 men have been arrested in connection with the death of Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool. The 9-year-old was killed by a gunman as she chased his intended target into her home last month. Her mother was also injured. A 34-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder. 3 others have been detained on suspicion of assisting an offender. Canadian police are conducting a massive search for 2 men suspected in a stabbing rampage that's killed at least 10 people and injured 15 others. Police say they believe Damien and Miles Sanderson attacked people in the Canadian province of Saskatchewan at 13 different crime locations yesterday. Some of the victims were targeted, others were at random. The pair were last spotted about 200 miles away from the crime scenes. More on that as we get it. But for the moment, you're up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, where now it's time for Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight. My panel, a new face onto this show anyway, Toby Young, the director of the Free Speech Union and chair also of the Conservatives, the Oxfordshire Conservatives, William Hall. Good evening to both of you. We're going to be getting into politics tonight. Liz Truss, what do you reckon then? I mean, got to be honest, most of us saw it coming anyway, didn't we? Although I have to say, when I was watching it, I was thinking, you know what, there's a part of me that would just have loved Rishi Sunak to get in, just because I would have loved to have seen people's faces. Everyone that kind of does these polls and thinks they know what's going on and then get it completely wrong. Alas, it didn't happen. The polls were right, and Liz Truss is going to be the next Prime Minister. What do you reckon then? The right outcome or not? I also want to ask whether or not she's got a mandate. Many people, have to be honest, all the predictable ones, think that she doesn't. And of course, Boris Johnson. I can't close without talking about him. Can I? Bye-bye, Boris. What was his legacy? A good one or not? What will you remember him for? If there's one word that springs to mind when you hear Boris Johnson, what is that word? Keep it clean, please. It is tea time. Let me know all your thoughts on all of that. gbviews@gbnews.uk is that email. And we're running a Twitter poll as well. You know, we are high-tech here on Dewbs & Co. If you're on Twitter, get on and answer this question. Does Liz Truss, in your mind, have a mandate to govern? Do you reckon we need another general election? Tell me all of that. You can tweet me as well at GB News or at Michelle Dewbs. Well, first up, let's cross live, shall we, to GB News' political editor, Darren McCaffrey. He is outside Downing Street. Good evening, Darren. Bring us up to speed with the latest.
Hello,
not just Liz
Michelle.
Truss, but we've seen resignations. Talk to me. What's going on?
Yeah, really fascinating this, isn't it, in many regards, that we are starting to see already the mechanisms of government move into action, if you like. We know, for example, Liz Truss over the last couple of weeks, along with senior officials, have been talking to civil servants and to departmental officials about the change of government, trying to essentially come up with some policies that we're likely to see in the next week or so, tackling things like the cost of living crisis. But clearly there's also been lots of speculation, hasn't there? And unsurprisingly, they've been working on this as well about who precisely is going to be in and out of her cabinet. And tonight, in the last couple of minutes, clearly Priti Patel thinks that she's not going to be in the cabinet because she's decided to resign rather than being sacked tomorrow, talking about how it's been the privilege of her life to serve as Home Secretary. But she is very much returning to the Conservative backbenches. But yes, when Liz Truss goes tomorrow afternoon to see the Queen at Balmoral and then come back here to London, that is when essentially the cold, hard reality of governing is really going to be felt by the new Prime Minister, having to make some really, really big decisions on, as I say, energy bills, trying to grow the economy, on the migration crisis in the Channel, how to try and help the NHS get through this winter. And it comes at a time, it must be said, in which people are questioning a little bit her mandate, in that she did not win as large a majority today as people had predicted. Also, of course, she was not number one among MPs, and so she is taking also over a party that's pretty fractious, pretty divided, some of who wanted to see Boris Johnson stay on as PM. Be in no doubt there's going to be no honeymoon, Michelle, for Liz Truss. It's going to be straight in with the most difficult in-tray of decisions of any Prime Minister, at least since 1979. And my word, it's going to be a pretty turbulent few weeks and months ahead, I think.
Something tells me you're going to be absolutely right with that. Turbulent indeed. Darren McCaffrey, thank you very much for your insight. William Hall, I'm going to cut straight to the chase. You backed the wrong man. You was in Team Sunak. Are you a bit embarrassed today?
Well, a lot of members voted for one candidate, a lot of members voted for the other candidate. At the end of the day, the membership of the Tory party, of which there is a large number in rude health, was given a choice between two outstanding candidates. Now, I favoured a set of policies that were Rishi Sunak's, and Liz Truss has won. But it's very clear that the entire party now is going to be completely focused on getting behind Liz Truss and her agenda, which is a very conservative and sound agenda, and looking to the next general election, looking to the huge problems we've got with a dangerous, emerging, continuing threat from Russia and the cost of living crisis, which I predict will be as serious a threat to the country as COVID was, just when it comes to economics instead. So I don't actually believe, like your political editor said, that there is much disunity in the party. I think people are ready to roll their sleeves up and get on with the enormous job in hand.
You see, just before I bring Toby in, one of the things that's certainly frustrated me, and it's bored the living daylights out of me as well, quite frankly, is the length of this whole kind of process. Liz Truss was saying earlier on, it's the longest job interview ever. That's not true. Having been on The Apprentice, I can certainly say that it's that one that is. But the time frame of all of this, if what you're saying basically is that the whole party is united, they're all going to get behind Liz Truss, why did we need to mess around for all those last weeks then? Why didn't Sunak just pull out and we all got on with it?
I think that would be to confuse a choice between an argument, and there has been a choice but not an argument. It has gone on too long. The leadership election has definitely gone on too long. 12 large-scale public hustings, in my view, was too many. I chaired 2 hustings in the Thames Valley, and the members had really enjoyed the internal debate. They really enjoyed the policy discussion, but all through the summer, I think it would have been better if we'd been focusing externally on dealing with the threats that are emerging. Indeed.
Toby Young, you, on the other hand, backed Liz Truss. So are you celebrating tonight? Are you happy, man?
Well, I'm pleased that she won. I initially backed Kemi Badenoch, but switched to Liz when Kemi withdrew. She said she was elected as a Conservative and is going to govern as a Conservative. And as a true blue Conservative, I've got a wish list, which I hope she sees through, so I'd like her to...
Hang on, whoa, because we're going to come on to priorities in part 2. Okay. I'm just looking at whether or not it was the right decision. You raise an interesting point about Kemi Badenoch. One of the things that I'm quite interested in is there was a lot of candidates in the first place. Kemi Badenoch really kind of got a lot of traction because of culture wars. Less talk from Liz Truss about that, so it'll be interesting to see what she does kind of pick up on that agenda and how much of a priority priority that is, and how much of that is a priority to you at home, by the way? Do you remember the whole kind of culture wars, all the divides there about different language, etc.? Is that still a thing in your mind, or are you, have you moved on? Are you all about energy bills and things like that? Let me ask you about mandate, Toby, if I may, because lots of people, lots of the usual suspects. I think I've got a couple of examples I can pop up on the screen for you guys to read. Lots of the usual suspects popping up and basically suggesting that because of the numbers involved, Liz Truss doesn't have a mandate to run the country because 57% of the electorate, when I say the electorate, I mean the Tory members, they voted her in. That wasn't 50% though of the electorate. So you've got people like the one that should be ignored. I almost forgot her name, Nicola Sturgeon. I was busy ignoring her. She's saying Liz Truss doesn't have that mandate of 50% that she's then requiring for things like another referendum. Lots of the unions have got involved as well, pointing out that more people voted for things like the postal workers' strike than voted for Liz Truss. So has she got a mandate?
Well, I think the point that's often made, and has been made throughout this leadership contest, is that why should less than, 2% of the population be deciding, effectively electing the next Prime Minister? How can that be democratic? But I think that's to confuse the system we have with a presidential system. We have a prime ministerial system, and the authority of Liz Truss is rooted in the fact that she is the leader of the Conservative Party, which won a majority at the last general election. And, you know, this is actually the rule rather than the exception in British politics. I mean, it's how Callaghan succeeded Wilson, Major succeeded Thatcher, Brown succeeded Blair, Theresa May succeeded David Cameron, and Boris Johnson succeeded Theresa May. So it's not a particularly unusual way for a new Prime Minister to be elected. And I'm sure she will have a general election in due course and actually win a mandate for herself. And, you know, let's hope she does.
And William, in terms of kind of percentages, what I found quite interesting today was looking back since the members' ballots has been introduced and looking at the different leaders and what they got. So Liz Truss, we've just been talking about 57% at the member ballot stage. Johnson, 66%. May, obviously there wasn't one there because Andrea Leadsom pulled out. Cameron, he got 68%. Duncan Smith, 61%. So the point I'm making there is that since these members' ballots have been introduced, Liz Truss has fared the worse.
Well, I mean, she has won fair and square, and I think one of the problems with the way the British media talks is that it's all about perception and it's all about expectation. And in reality, if we had come... So, for instance, the German press today is reporting an absolutely stonking victory for Liz Truss because they haven't followed week in, week out the expectation game that's being played out. So it's very clear she has a mandate. It's very clear we don't live in a presidential system, thank goodness, because that often leads to tyranny. It's fantastic we have a system where you elect your local MP and that person then votes in Parliament and is led by a leader who is elected by that party. I think that's a fantastic bit of British liberty at work, to be honest.
But do you think that's the sentiment? Because at the end of the programme, I'm going to come on to Boris Johnson. And I know that a lot of people feel very passionately, many of them are watching this programme, that the reason that the Tories got in, especially with the landslide of which they did in 2019, was because of Boris Johnson, that people turned out for him. Yep. Not because of all of these individual Tories and all the rest of it, but for him.
So elections often, particularly landslide elections, are won by creating an electoral coalition of people. Boris Johnson managed to speak to people who hadn't been spoken to from the Conservative Party for a very long time. I've known Boris since I was 17. He is an election winner, was a fantastic Prime Minister. The Tory party is not going to turn its back on him. But it is definitely clear that in order to keep this majority or win a bigger majority, the Conservative Party is going to have to face outwards, start getting the work done and not give in to the sort of media speculation that say that there's party disunity. Only 650 spoilt ballots out of some 150,000 people voting. That says to me that actually people are buying into the process and they've enjoyed the choice and now they're ready to move on.
But nearly 20% of people didn't vote. I found that quite interesting.
I find that odd as well, to be honest with you.
What were you doing? So if you are one of the... It was 83% turnout, so not quite 20%, but not far off. What were you doing? So you've got the opportunity to choose who is going to be the next Prime Minister, and you didn't bother. And I wonder why. I can't help but wonder why, because obviously you're very engaged in politics to the point where you're a member of a political party. So why not? Are you one of those people? Get in touch with me and tell me, if you are a member that didn't vote, tell me why. Are you one of the, I think it was 654 people that had their votes discounted? I dread to think what some of you might have put on those. Tell me if you could have voted but didn't, why? Toby Young, on this point of the party potentially being divided, do you reckon that everyone's going to kind of forget everything that's gone on and we all come together as one big Tory happy family and on we go?
I think we can expect the party to come together over the next few weeks. After all, you know, there was people unified behind John Major when he succeeded Margaret Thatcher, and that was a more controversial defenestration even than the defenestration of Boris Johnson. And Boris has promised to be on his best behaviour. He's not going to turn up at party conference. He's not, I don't think, going to agitate or lead any rebellions from the backbenches. He says he wants to come back, but I don't think he'll want to come back until Liz Truss has been given a chance. So I think in the immediate future, we can expect to see some party unity. In due course, if things start going wrong, particularly if if the majority she wins at the next general election, assuming she wins one, isn't as large, or if it's a hung parliament, then I think we can see some fermentation and rebellion. But until then, I think she'll be given a fair run.
Do you? Well, I'm asking you guys tonight whether or not you think she has a mandate. I'm going to put this succinctly. You think, yes, she does, absolutely. Norma is echoing exactly the point that you've just been making. We're not American. We don't vote for a Prime Minister. We vote for members of a party. If the leader of a party does not win a seat, a new leader is chosen. Yeah.
Another point on that, Michelle, you know, you quoted Nicola Sturgeon saying she's won less than 50% of the eligible voters, so therefore she doesn't have a mandate. I mean, if there was an in-out Scottish referendum and her side won, but by less than 50% of she wouldn't say, oh, in that case, the result is void, we're going to remain in the United Kingdom for the time being, would she?
No, but then what the pushback would be is that what people are proposing is actually to have that ballot, to have that in the first place, you'd have to have 50% of your electorate plus into it, signing into it. So I don't know, if you want to orchestrate a strike, 50% of your members have to take part. You have to have 50% turnout or more. Same for the referendum, and that's the point that people are trying to make. You didn't have your 50%. Personally, I've got to say, I think everyone's clutching at straws, quite frankly, and I think that that is the system, and if people don't like the system, then you've got to change and push the system and try and create change that way. But to be fair, it will be an interesting dynamic between Liz Truss and the unions, like the CWU is the one that I mentioned earlier on, who's already tweeting, saying that the mandate is not there. We shall come on to that in just a second, though, because what should Liz Truss's priorities be? I mean, she has inherited... again, I was going to say something that I can't say at tea time. I've got to watch my mouth. I am from Hull. Sometimes I forget that I'm on national television. But she's inherited something that's not great, isn't it? This problem's absolutely everywhere. You tell me, what should she pick up first? What is the priority in your mind? And what should be the priority in hers? Tell me. I'm going to take a quick break and we'll get into that in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. My panel, Toby Young, who's the director of the Free Speech Union, and the chair of the Oxfordshire Conservatives, William Hall. Lots of you guys been getting in touch. At the end of this programme, I'm going to touch on Boris. I'm asking you his legacy. Give me one word that sums up Boris Johnson's legacy to you. I'm smiling because some of the words I can't read out at tea time, so do keep it clean, because it's a serious question, everybody. When you think of Boris Johnson, what will you think of going forward? Also, was lots... Oh, Margaret, this is interesting. You said you are, because I was asking as well, are you a Tory party member and didn't go out and vote? Nearly 20% of people that was the case for. Margaret says this happened to her. She went to the post office on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. to post her votes and to have it delivered, she was told. There was a postal strike and it wouldn't have reached them, so she said she didn't bother. Alan says the reason I didn't vote is because it was either the backstabber Sunak or the Remainer Liberal Democrat Truss. He says I wanted Penny Mordaunt, or rather I would have kept Boris, even with all of his faults. They need to revise the system of selection and let us vote on more candidates rather than narrow it just down to the two that they want. That says Alan. Someone else, who is this? GS says, for pity's sake, Dewbs, you are lowering yourself to the BBC's disgraceful standards and setting up a hit on the PM before she's even done anything wrong. No, I'm not doing anything of the sort. I actually said that I do think they've got a mandate because that is the system, but I'm asking the question because there are many people out there that are quite furious about the goings-on and want another general election. That's why I'm asking you, which camp are you in? Toby, I was talking earlier on about priorities because we know who's going to be the Prime Minister now. What should she focus on? You told me you've got a list. I said to you, hold that thought, because we're not there yet, but we're there now.
OK, I can pull out my list.
Yes.
Well, as the General Secretary of the Free Speech Union, that's the #1 issue for me, and I hope she does something to stand up for free speech, and that means taking forward the Higher Education Bill, which will strengthen free speech protections, at least in English universities, and doing something about the legal but harmful stuff in the Online Safety Bill. And I have to say I'm slightly concerned that rumour has it Nadine Dorries is going to remain as Culture Secretary because the Online Safety Bill is very much her baby, and I can't see her doing much to amend it if she's still in post. I think she needs to sort out the Northern Ireland Protocol. I think she needs to lift the fracking ban. She obviously needs to do something about illegal immigration. I think she needs to lean into culture war issues. Like you, I'm slightly dubious that she will, but I hope she does. I think she needs to stand up for Britain's heritage, needs something to do something about all the woke trans nonsense in the NHS and elsewhere. So those
blimey, you do have a list.
Those are
You're not messing around.
I think she needs to govern like a Conservative. I think she needs to be the Prime Minister that we all hope Boris Johnson would be, but who disappointed many of us.
Well, let's listen, shall we, to what Liz Truss has said will be her priorities.
And my friends, we need to show that we will deliver over the next 2 years. I will deliver a bold plan to cut taxes and grow our economy. I will deliver on the energy crisis, dealing with people's energy bills, but also dealing with the long-term issues we have on energy supply.
Convinced, William?
I have to disagree with Toby. I think the two massive issues that the UK is going to face that have to be dealt with. First of all, the economy and the role of the state in individuals' lives. It's very clear that during COVID, for whatever reason, the state expanded in its scope dramatically. And I think it's a good moment now to have a reset and to look at the role of the state in individuals' lives For instance, do we always need to go into intervention as a method of creating policy outcomes? I would say probably not. The second thing is we need to be aware of the enormous global threats that are coming. Russia, China. Liz Truss has said she's going to increase defence spending as a proportion of GDP. That is a good thing. But I don't necessarily think PR stunts by the NHS or by police is the number one issue that I would point a finger at. While I agree with Toby on it, I don't agree with how important it is a priority. I'm more convinced that the economy is the main thing. And it is worth noting that we are talking about inflation at 10%. Now, my party has historically been the party of economic competence. It is absolutely critical to the next election that we not only achieve a reduction in inflation and a creation of more jobs, but also talk about energy security in a serious way for the first time. Russia should not be able to hold Europe's feet to the fire in a bullying way and expect to get away with it. It's time we got serious with these people, in my view. Those are my big two priorities. I think from what she said, it sounds like she understands that too.
You got your priorities wrong?
I don't disagree with anything William said, but I do think that he's downplaying the importance of culture war issues. I think that's the way to hold on to those red wall Tory voters. They care about those issues as well as caring about economic issues. I mean, take the police. I don't think that's a sideshow. I don't think depoliticising the police would be a PR stunt. I think there was a policy exchange report last week which found that more people agree with the statement the police are more concerned with being woke than they are with solving crimes. More people agree with that than disagree. And when we see, police performing the Macarena, as they did a couple of weeks ago during a Pride March in Lincoln, when we see that they've, investigated and recorded 250,000 non-crime hate incidents in England and Wales alone since 2014, when you look at the appalling rates for solving burglaries and thefts over the past 10 or 15 years. I mean, I think people are really unhappy with the police. They feel the police has been captured by this woke cult. They aren't really doing their job properly. They need to get back to basics and focus on solving crime.
Do you agree with Toby? Is that one of your priorities at home? Is it the priority, or is it more, as William's saying, energy, economy? You're saying that it's time to get serious when it comes to Putin and energy. What do you mean?
Well, it was a huge mistake, in my view, for Europe to move away from nuclear energy. There were an awful lot of decisions on energy policy that were made as a reaction to actually the kind of wokeism that Toby's talking about, the very superficial green agenda that was pushed forward 15, 20 years ago, that wasn't actually about environmental stewardship. It was about just increasing tax on industry for the sake of it. Now, my view is that this is the opportunity to regain energy security, independence. In the US, they have done that incredibly successfully. They've gone some decade ago from being a net importer of gas to now being an exporter. But the main point I would say is that I agree with Toby, but I would say that the things Toby cares about, that he's talking about then, should be dealt with swiftly and moved on from. The police should be focusing back on actually dealing with crime, but we shouldn't make the entirety of politics about these issues. Institutions need to get in a line and they need to stop playing politics. But the real things the Prime Minister needs to deal with are things like national defence. Those are the really serious things. We're talking about a Russia that has got its eyes on Europe, that is looking at us as if we are a prey, not a predator. And China is looking to see...
Yeah, what does that mean? Because I thought that Putin was just looking at Ukraine. So what is this sudden risk all of a sudden now to Europe?
Well, I think, so first of all, clearly, if Putin had been successful in what he wanted, which was a swift invasion of Ukraine and a minimal international response, I think he wouldn't have stopped there, point one. Secondly, I think that China is looking at what we do as the West in response to Putin's bullying with eyes on Taiwan. It was a massive, colossal mistake of the years of Labour government under Blair and Brown that they dropped the ball when it came to international policy and having us be able to be a unilateral part of the world. Now, one of the great reasons that we voted for Brexit, and it's fantastic, is that we can start actually having an independent foreign policy again. While the EU moves towards integration, we're actually one of the biggest unilateral providers of military aid to Ukraine. I'm very proud of that. But these are the things that really matter to me. We should do what Toby's talking about, but we should do it swiftly and move on. These things aren't worth digging into. The real issues are what Liz Truss is talking about.
And don't you... Sorry.
I was going to say, the problem is it's not that easy to do these things quickly. If you look at the problems that Priti Patel is having in doing something about the people smugglers and rubber dinghies in the English Channel. I mean, there's no lack of will, I don't think, on her part to do something about it. But one of the reasons she hasn't been able to do more about it is because the courts and the civil service in the Home Office are all against it, are all against her. And I think in order to achieve a lot of Liz Truss's agenda, whether it's security, energy, whether it's depoliticising the police, she has to embark on wholesale civil service reform, and that's not something that you can do overnight.
And do you think, because I mean, we've got to be clear as well, that one of the things that's gone on recently within politics, particularly within the Tory party, there's been so much kind of, instead of going out and talking about positives of policies, there's been so much kind of arguing, falling out, or Boris Johnson's done this and all the rest of it. And that has undermined the Tories in lots of people's views. Now, when it comes to Liz Truss, and I think this is the first time it's happened, the MPs chose Sunak. The members chose Truss. So you've got this really interesting dynamic now where actually the majority of MPs backed Sunak in their ballots. So do you actually think it's all well and good sitting in television going, oh, yeah, let's all come together and all the rest of it. Do you think actually that will happen?
Yes, I do. Because in reality, both these people, both these two choices, were talking about pretty broadly similar things, that they believe the state needs to be smaller, they believe that the economy needs to be strong, and they believe that defence needs extra investment. And I would say, from my perspective, as a leader of a part of the voluntary party in the UK, I'm very pleased that it was the members who chose, because I don't think the MPs in themselves should have the right to appoint our party leader. It should always be the membership. And Rishi Sunak could very well, he was pressured to, I think, have decided to pull out, as previous contenders have done. And I was feeding in internally that if that had happened, I think we should have had a reopened nomination process. I think it's a very good thing.
Really? Make it even longer?
Well, I mean, as I said to you before, it's a good thing. It should have been shorter. But I mean, fundamentally, it is a choice between two people in the same party. What you're saying, though, about the kind of naff pantomime politics that we've seen recently with Labour people going out wearing T-shirts saying, I've never kissed a Tory. I mean, that's just deeply, deeply sad. It reminds you of student politics days. And there were people in my university protesting Remembrance Sunday parades. It's this kind of same virtue-signalling, daft nonsense that gets us into these problems. And to be honest with you, if they want to wear that, I think they should stop being an MP, because it demeans the position they hold. So if you want to wear I've never kissed a Tory T-shirt, you shouldn't be in public office? Yeah, because they're representing a vast number of constituents in their area who voted Conservative. And once you are elected, you should represent your whole of your constituency. And it's just virtue signalling rubbish, as far as I'm concerned. And it's exactly these things that if we focus on, we are distracted from the real issues that are actually important.
You see, as the General Secretary of the Free Speech Union, whilst I disagree profoundly with Lucy Powell's choice of T-shirt, I would defend to the death her right to wear it. But what about
What William's saying is that actually, in this country, what we need now more than ever is proper, true leadership. We need the best of the best leading this country forward. Our elected officials should be better than us. That's literally what they're paid to do. Mm-hmm. And some of the stuff that goes on, ranging from MPs going on stupid reality TV shows, calling people have a different view scum, wearing stupid T-shirts, some of the stuff that goes on, it's childlike. And actually, we deserve better. I think we deserve a better calibre, a better standard than what we get delivered.
I think that's true, and I'll say something very controversial now, which I'm sure a lot of the viewers will disagree with. I think if we want a higher calibre of person going into politics in this country, we need to pay our MPs more. The reason they have such a high calibre of people going into politics in Singapore, for instance, is that they're paid a huge amount of money, upwards of £500,000 a year. I mean, one of the reasons...
Goodness me.
One of the reasons MPs...
I'm in the wrong job.
...are often a bit distracted is because being an MP isn't their only job. And if it is their only job, they've got an eye on something else. I mean, that was one of Rishi Sunak's shortcomings in the leadership contest. I think if we want to get the best of the best going into politics, we have to pay them the sort of money they could get if they go and work for Google or go and work for...
So what would you pay them then?
I'd pay the very best, up to $1 million a year, I think.
Up to £1 million a year, and we've got what, 650? We've got 650 MPs.
The Prime Minister of Singapore gets more than $1 million a year.
So, right, what do you think to this, ladies and gentlemen? An MP potentially earning £1 million a year. Would you get all your expenses and stuff like that on top as well? Or is that all in?
I think they probably wouldn't need to. I mean, one of the reasons people distrust MPs is because they do try and put so much through on expenses. And the reason they do that is because they're not paid enough. So I think if they were paid more, then they shouldn't get quite such generous expenses allowance.
I have to say I couldn't disagree more. Politics should be a vocation. You're talking about salaries that put people at the absolute top of earnings. It would create a system where there was even more of a problem with a disconnect between the people who are doing the governing and the people who are being governed. MPs are in it largely as a vocation because they care about it. I think that is a powerful motivator. If we start having people going into it for the money, God, I don't know where we get to. It'd be dreadful.
What about ego? Because you say that you think loads of these people who go into politics are doing it because they're a vocation, they care so much. Do you not think ego plays a part?
I think if people went and spent an average week with an MP, they would find it wasn't quite the ego trip that they suspect it is. In reality, a lot of an MP's work is basically social work. It's looking after the constituents' day-to-day interests. It's not standing up in the chamber making grandiose speeches like some of the grandees of the past. Nowadays, actually, a lot of it is just dealing with the root problems that people encounter. But what Toby's saying is that we can have sort of whizzy CEO people like, Silicon Valley. No, I'll go to the House of Commons. I think that's a very dangerous road to go down.
I think the problem is politics used to attract quite a high calibre of person, partly because they were motivated by a sense of public duty. I think that's still there, but also because being an MP had a certain amount of status attached to it. You were, you were someone important, someone respected and looked up to in your community. That's gone. These days, if you're an MP, people think you're fiddling your expenses. You're in it because you like being on telly. You're probably having an affair with your secretary. It doesn't have the same prestige, the same status that it did. So we need to find something to compensate for that.
See, I almost think the opposite, because you've got MPs going on things like, I'm a celebrity. But you're not a celebrity.
That's because they're not earning enough money as MPs.
Yeah, but in terms of how we value them and the kind of... I think one of the problems that we've got in this country is the way that we act like so many of these MPs are some kind of rock star celebrities. You're not. You're public servants. You're paid to serve the public.
I'm not sure that people who go on reality shows are rock star celebrities, aren't they? Generally people who are a bit D-list and need to scrape some pennies together to pay the mortgage.
I don't know. You tell me. Am I missing
the... there, Michelle.
Oh, do you know, look, see, for a second there, I didn't even explore the potential for a dig because you're quite right. I did do a reality TV show 17 years ago nearly, everyone. 17 years ago I was on The Apprentice. Can you believe it?
Was it really that long ago?
Yeah.
Seems like yesterday.
But I didn't do it to scrape pennies together. I took a pay drop to do reality TV. There you go. Don't know how quite I've got onto that when I'm talking about Liz Truss's priorities, but we cleared that up. Fascinating insight there from Toby. What do you think to what he says? I'm bemoaning some of the standard and calibre of the people that are paid to represent us. One suggestion there from Toby is pay them more, up to £1 million a year. Ooh, are you sitting at home thinking to yourself, that is for me? Would that money make you consider being an MP? Are you good enough to be an MP, but you're just sitting there thinking, no, I wouldn't earn enough as it stands? Let me know your thoughts. What about the priorities as well? Are you more kind of on William's side of the fence, which is actually stay out of it a little bit more, Tories, let the people get on with stuff, less state intervention? Or are you more about kind of what Toby was saying, let's prioritise on things like getting back to basics with crime, stop all the ridiculousness that goes on with the police at this moment? Or maybe you might be just a mixture of the two. Don't forget, keep your one words for Boris Johnson coming in as well, because in a couple of minutes I'll be looking at him and what his legacy is. Do keep them clean, these single words, because I want to read out as many of them as I can. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'll have some of your thoughts. And as I said, your one words for Boris. See you in a couple of minutes.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, as the Conservative Party finally elects its new leader and our new Prime Minister, we'll bring you the sharpest political analysis from Westminster. Education Minister Andrea Jenkyns and Tory grantee Edwina Currie join me live to examine the biggest challenges facing the next PM. Plus, does World Economic Forum darling Bill Gates have too much influence on British politics? Neil Oliver weighs in, and I'll break down a huge day in British politics and beyond with my superstar panel, the Daily Telegraph's Associate Political Editor Christopher Hope, Senior Reporter at the iNewspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the former MEP and political commentator Belinda DeLucy. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday, from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio, and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel. Britain's
news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight. We've got my panel, Toby Young, who's the director of the Free Speech Union and chair of the Oxfordshire Conservatives, William Hall. You guys have been getting in touch with me. A mixture of what Liz Truss should be focusing on. Lots of talk, by the way, in terms of what MPs should be paid. Mark says, I agree, we should give them a raise, $250,000 to $350,000 per annum. No more. He's talking about 1,000, obviously, not pound. Adam is completely the other side of the fence. Say MPs should get minimum wage and see then how they manage. What about Darren saying about what we were just talking about, Ukraine, energy and all the rest of it? Darren saying, when we talk about policy priorities, it might be time, he says, for referendums. He says, give us a referendum, for example, about paying for the Ukraine situation. Don't take it for granted that that's what we all want. I guess there's a difference, though, isn't there, as well? You can have your foreign policy and perhaps still shield some people from the cost impact of it. Anyway, keep your thoughts coming in. Boris Johnson, he is still our Prime Minister until tomorrow anyway, when he'll go to Balmoral to formally offer his resignation to the Queen. I thought to myself then, should we just reflect on him? Ask you one word that sums up his legacy. But for now, let's just remind ourselves of some of the best bits.
The problem with the Labour Party today, Mr. Speaker, is that he's a lawyer, not a leader. That's the truth.
I'm not sure I can tweet any of this.
Yesterday I went, as we all must, to Peppa Pig World. I don't know if you've been to Peppa Pig World. Who's been to? Hands up anybody's been to Peppa Pig World. Not enough. And Mr. Speaker, I apologise unreservedly for the offence that it has caused up and down the country, and I apologise for the impression that it gives. It is clearly now the will of the Parliamentary Conservative Party that there should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new Prime Minister. And I want you to know how sad I am to be giving up the best job in the world.
Best job in the world. I'd love to ask Liz Truss that in about a month's time and ask her whether or not she still feels that way about the job as it stands with the country as it is. But Boris Johnson, William, what do you reckon to him, his legacy?
Well, I think it's worth taking us back to when we had voted for Brexit as a country, and we were stuck in a colossal attempt by the institution to frustrate the will of the people. If you go back to that time, remembering those failed attempts to get legislation through Parliament, remembering the score upon score of institutional newspapers, TV appearances of pundits saying how it should never happen, and people basically trying to stop that vote from having an effect. Boris Johnson delivered Brexit. That is his absolute core fundamental legacy.
But hang on, anyone that's in Northern Ireland or anyone that's involved in fishing and things like that, they'll be yelling at the screen saying, no, he didn't.
I think it's going to take 10, 20 years to actually get the regulation post-Brexit in place. It's an incredibly complicated system. But the fundamental piece of work that was basically impossible to do to most people's view for a couple of years because of the fact the institution, the civil service wouldn't let it happen, actually getting Brexit effected, getting the people's vote to have an impact, that was something that Boris did that no one else could have done. Getting that majority in the 2019 election, I don't think any other Prime Minister could have done that. To my mind, Boris Johnson was an outstanding election winner, an astounding deliverer of the democratic mandate that was achieved in that referendum, and I think he will go down as a really effective Prime Minister in that respect. Personally, I regret that he's gone so soon. I suspect he will still have an involvement in politics, but I suspect that he will be a much greater team player than people are trying to make out he's going to be, because at the end of the day, there's an election around the corner. The Conservatives are looking at a historic fifth term. That'll be the first time it's ever been done by any political party. You know, the Conservative Party knows how to win elections. Everyone's going to be focusing on that.
I like your optimism there, Toby. Your face says that you're not washing in that, some of it. Go on, tell me.
Well, I agree with William that he managed to unravel the Gordian knot that we got ourselves into over Brexit, and I was a Brexiteer, so I was pleased to see him largely get Brexit done, even though I don't think the job's finished yet. But having won that 80-seat majority, I think he could have done so much more. And he largely squandered the political capital he'd earned. Admittedly, that was partly because his term was interrupted by the global pandemic. And I thought he initially got that wrong. I was a lockdown skeptic, thought that was completely the wrong decision. And that's one of the reasons we're in such a pickle economically now, because of all the money we spent then to furlough people and the rest of it. And it's leaving a terrible legacy in our schools, mental health, the health service, the rest of it. So I think that was a terrible mistake, but he did, in the end, self-correct and lifted all restrictions on July 19th last year and didn't reimpose them at Christmas, although that may not have been entirely his decision. So I was disappointed that he didn't do more with the mandate that he won. He created this incredible coalition. He won one of the largest majorities we've seen in my lifetime. He set out a very plausible and I thought very attractive Conservative agenda. And then we didn't really see him see any of that through. And he went all in on net zero. COP26, somehow that was going to be part of his legacy, not Brexit. It was as though he wanted to kind of the metropolitan elite to fall in love with him again, and they were never going to do that. So that was really disappointing. I detest net zero. I hope that Liz Truss kicks it into the long grass. So for me, he was a disappointment, but I'm glad he got Brexit done.
I've got lots of words coming in. I'll be reading some of them out, your words, in a second about Boris. But don't you worry, like what Toby was just saying there. Earlier on, you was talking about you want the government to be less into the interventions and all the rest of it. But the programme of interventions that we had because of COVID, brought in by Boris, that has almost made people dependent on the government's teats.
I think, as I was saying earlier, we need a reset moment. I was disappointed that a large debate about the size of the state and the role of the state wasn't had after COVID's most exacerbated moments were moved past. I think that's probably a good opportunity for Liz Truss to do now. I think when Boris did what Thatcher did, by the way, of course, which was to bring conservatism and conservative values into parts of the UK that hadn't previously had that sort of thing. And I think that's a major part of his legacy as well.
Well, there you go. That's the panel's thoughts. Let me give you yours. Your one words when it comes to Boris Johnson. You ready? I've got a lot of them. I'll rattle through as many as I can because Look at the time, everyone. It flies, doesn't it, when you're having fun? Jeff says winner. Graham, ill-informed. Trevor, unremarkable. Parker, genius. Tasmin, unfulfilled. Gordon, unfortunate. Andrew, betrayed. Chris, sad. Michael, unique. Robert, idiot. Kitty, trickster. Michael, deviant. Elaine, bombastic. Jane, unconservative. I like this one, Annie. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. That is indeed one word. I like it. Christopher says betrayer of Northern Ireland. Graham says doomed. Anne says lovely. That's nice, Anne. Lovely. Neil, charismatic. Will says waste. Wiz says piffle. Annie says refreshing. Youssef says fallacious. Keith says underwhelming. Robert says patriotic. Janice says useless. Ray says cavalier. Jacqueline says disappointing. Jim says brilliant. Paul says charlatan. Art says one that's difficult for my accent, but earth. Anthony says herb. Robert says disappointment. Barry says liar. Ian says buffoon. Graham says legend. And brief. There you go. Right, that is all I've got time for. Toby Young, William Hall, thank you very much for your company. Thank you at home for yours as well. I'm going to go home thinking about £1 million salary for an MP. Oh, can you imagine? Tell me which one of the current crop would be worth that kind of amount? Any or not? Right, that's all I've got time for. Nigel Farage up next. Nigel, good evening to you. What have you got for us?
Michelle, good evening. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about what Boris Johnson's legacy is. We'll look at Liz Truss, her win, how emphatic was it, is the party split? But our big debate tonight, with a very wide range of guests with differing views, is are the Conservative Party drinking in the last chance saloon? Are they headed for a dramatic, disastrous defeat at the next election? Or can Liz Truss turn the whole thing around? That's what we'll debate. And I'm going to be here for the next 2 hours, an extended Farage show tonight. But before all of that, let's get the all-important weather.
Evening, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Tomorrow will bring another mixture of sunshine and showers, but probably more showers tomorrow compared to today. And again, there could be some thunderstorms too. This area of low pressure is driving our weather, and it's not moving very far very quickly. It will control our weather throughout this week. One line of heavy showers is drifting northwards at the moment. We have a Met Office yellow warning in place across parts of England and Wales. A lot of rain falling in a short space of time. You may get woken up overnight by a flash of lightning or a rumble of thunder once more. Those heavy showers drifting northwards into parts of Scotland by dawn. Behind, actually, many places becoming drier through the early hours. Quite a warm, humid night yet again. Tuesday will again be a mixture of sunshine and showers, many places starting dry, but showers becoming pretty widespread pretty quickly across Scotland and northern England. Again, some thunderstorms are possible, and then we'll see more heavy showers developing across parts of England and Wales during the day. Again, if you don't see the showers, and some will avoid them in the sunshine, feeling quite pleasant with temperatures in the high teens or low 20s. But more downpours to come, the potential for some pretty tricky driving conditions throughout Tuesday. Heavy downpours, a lot of spray, surface water on the roads, hail and thunder mixed in as well. And you can see these showers really just keep on churning across the country as you head into Wednesday. There's the low pressure system just sending gusty winds at times into the southwest and throwing up more heavy showers during Wednesday. Again, many places will be dry at first on Wednesday, but certainly by the afternoon, widespread heavy showers, thunderstorms in places. The wind's coming up from the south, though, so it's relatively warm and humid air with temperatures, again, into the high teens or the low 20s. The outlook, well, more of the same, really. That low pressure continuing to control our weather. Lots of heavy showers Thursday, Friday. Signs of things turning a little drier for most of us on Saturday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.